It is the sixth day of nationwide strikes in France. Authorities warn up to 1.4 million people may hit the streets across some 250 locations nationwide. Many are expecting it to be the biggest show of force yet against President Macron's unpopular pension reform plan. Several train services have already grounded to a halt, with just a handful still operating across France. Many flights have also been cancelled and schools closed. But despite the disruptions to everyday life, many in France have voiced their solidarity with the strikers, noting their cause is just and necessary.
Bien sûr que ça m'impacte parce que voilà, il faut que j'arrive au travail comme tout le monde. Voilà, j'aime pas être stressé sur le chemin. Et deux, c'est pas si important, c'est capital. Parce qu'en fait, il s'agit de nos retraites. C'est pour ça qu'on travaille toute une vie. Donc voilà, moi je sors pas pour militer pour ça, mais je leur donne raison pour ce qu'ils font.
A slew of industries are set to be affected by the strikes, from waste management to oil refineries, all voicing their anger over the government's proposal to raise the retirement age to 64 from 62 currently. And that's on top of stiffer requirements for workers to receive a full pension. The bill is under debate in the French Senate this week. For more, Ross Cullen joins us live from very noisy Paris at the moment. Ross, what's fueling the government's urgency to pass this bill?
Hi Jill, hi Dawn. Well, you might be able to see some of the floats behind me, the union balloons, as the protest is getting ready to get underway here in the French capital. One of more than 250 different demonstrations taking place nationwide today, the latest day of social action. You can really hear the noise on the streets of the protesters to try to show the government their determination to force ministers to drop their plans to restructure France's pension system and to raise France's retirement age. That is proposed legislation the government wants to try to hurry through Parliament. It really wants to show the country that it is a reformist, it is an agile government that can get policies done quickly. The problem is for Emmanuel Macron that his party doesn't have a majority in Parliament, and so he's going to have to rely on the support of perhaps the centre-right Republicans, the party of former President Nicolas Sarkozy, or different parliamentary instruments to try to get this policy through. It's being spearheaded by Elisabeth Borne, the Prime Minister. She wants the policy to clear Parliament by the end of the spring and to be enacted by the end of the summer. Emmanuel Macron did try to get this passed in his first term, but the COVID-19 pandemic put paid to that. He was re-elected in 2022 on a promise to raise France's retirement age and restructure the pension system. He's had to temper that ambition from 65. You mentioned it's actually going to try to be raised to 64 instead. But this is a policy he says he was re-elected on in 2022. He wants to try to pass it as quickly as possible.
Polls, Ross, suggest that more than half the country supports these strikes. So how likely is the bill to be passed?
Well, they're expecting hundreds of thousands of people just in Paris alone, more than 1 million people in the country as a whole. This Tuesday, for this 7th day of industrial action, we are seeing walkouts, we are seeing strikes by all sorts of different sectors. Real disruption in the transport sector. Some schools are closed as teachers walk out. But despite all of that disruption, a majority of people do support the strikes and do not support the government's reform. The government argues it is necessary for France's pension system to be financially sustainable in the future. It says that it needs to be done, although the unions have said that it doesn't. There are other options that can be pursued by different ministers and by different policy think tanks to try to show that there are other options, not raising to retirement age to 64 and perhaps pursuing different policies. The government is determined not to budge. The unions are determined not to budge. You can see the pressure on the streets, and so it does seem likely that at the moment both sides are continuing with the demands from the protesters for the government to stop, and the government saying we cannot stop. We are pushing this through Parliament. It's already cleared the lower house and is currently being scrutinised by senators in the upper house. The unions have said, though, that there could be rolling strikes. At the end of every day, they're going to petition their members. Would you like to protest on Wednesday? Would you like to protest on Thursday the 9th, on Friday the 10th? And so we could well see days and days of continuous strikes by the French unions to try to show they're determined to force the government to back down on its demands, which it says at the moment it has no intention of doing so.
Ross Cullen, live in Paris. Thank you.